Hi, Deirdre Macnamara here from Letterkenny IT. In this video we're going to take a look at fractions, decimals and percentages and how you move from one to another. The learning outcomes for this video are formatting of fractions and percentages and getting the decimal places right as well. Converting from one format to another, how many decimal places should you give in your answer, rounding down decimal places or up decimal places, how to do powers, and also how to do roots. Okay, so for example, you may know already that a half is the same as 0.5 is the same as 50%. And it's important to be able to move from one format to another. So it's easy when it's nice round numbers like that. But what about if you have something like 27 divided by 36? What's that as a decimal? What's that as a percentage? And you need to be able to move from one format to the other. Okay, so to start off, to convert from a fraction to a decimal, you divide the numerator by the denominator. So numerator and denominator are words that are used in what I describe as the mathematical language. So in English, a numerator is the bit on the top. Okay, the bit on the top is quite a long bit of English, so they don't say that anymore, they say numerator. So the bit on the top divided by the denominator or the bit on the bottom. Okay, so on your calculators then 1 divided by 2 will give you 0.5. Okay, so for example, here are some whole numbers. We can simplify them down if we want, and then we can divide out. So divide the bit in the top by the bit on the bottom. And here is one completely worked out. So 9 can be reduced down to 3. So divide the top by 3, divide the bottom by 3. So 3 over 1. How many ones are there in 3? There are 3. When deciding to simplify out a fraction, use the biggest number you can that divides evenly into both the numerator, or the bit on the top, and the bit on the bottom. And that's an easy way to simplify it out. If there's something that you haven't done before, there's more tutorials available, and there's a link in Blackboard as well, and that's the link on the internet. So here's some questions you can work out, and here are the answers. Okay. Now, converting from a decimal to a percentage, you multiply the decimal by 100 and then you add in the percentage sign. So 0.5, if we want to convert 0.5 to a percentage, we multiply by 100, okay, or move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Okay, so 50% is what it converts over. 3 multiplied by 100 and you get 300%. And so if you multiply these here, move the decimal point 2 places to the right, or multiply by 100, and here are your answers. Okay, converting of a percentage to a fraction. The denominator, the bit on the bottom of the fraction, is always 100. Okay, so 40% is 40 over 100. And then if you want to simplify that out, okay, 20 divides evenly in there, 20 divides evenly in there, so it's 2 over 5. Okay, 37 is the bit on the top, 100 is the bit on the bottom, and there's nothing that divides evenly into 37 or 100. Okay, so converting fractions and then simplify. Okay, and there's your answers. Okay, to convert a decimal to a fraction, remove the decimal point, and this is the numerator. That's the bit on the top. Step number 2, The number of decimal places shows you how many zeros to put in the denominator. That's the bit on the bottom. So for example, we started off with 0.2. It says remove the decimal point. So we end up with a 2 on the top. How many zeros will we put on the bottom? Well, there was one decimal place, so we'll put 1 0 on the bottom. Okay, and that's why we end up with 10. We have 2 decimal places in this case. Okay, so we'll have 2 zeros over here. We have 1 decimal place in this case, so we have 1 0 here. Okay, so again, our steps were remove the decimal point, get rid of the decimal point, and that's why we end up with 25 on the top. The number of zeros in your denominator is determined by the number of decimal places that was in the question at the beginning. Okay, so we get 25 over 100. Okay. Here are some examples to convert. Converting to decimal, converting to percentage, and then converting to fractions. And here are your answers. Okay, how many decimal places should an answer be rounded to? That's a question students often ask me. Well, there's a number of answers. One more decimal place than the original data. Okay, roughly if you started off with 2, maybe give your answer up to 3. Okay, have some sort of connection with the original data, or the same number of decimal places as the original data. Okay, so it just depends, but roughly we don't want to see 27 decimal places. So if I give you a question and there's 2 decimal places, then maybe give me back either 2 or 3 decimal places in your answer. But never remove the decimal places until you're finished the sum and you're rounding off. Looking at the context of the question will often answer it itself. So if you're talking about the price of an apple in a shop, then those decimal places are very important. But if you're talking about the price of a hotel that is being purchased, the actual hotel is being purchased, whether there's an extra 50 cents or not doesn't really make much difference. So rounding decimal places then. So again, I mentioned that numbers should only be rounded at the end of a calculation. It's very important that you don't do it too early on. So if you round too early on and then you multiply by a big number, you could be out by quite a bit. Numbers below 5 are rounded down. Numbers 5 and over are rounded up. So for example, to round this to 3 decimal places, so we started off with 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So we look at this last number here. 2 is in this category here. It's below 5, so it's rounded down. You just remove it from the end. In this case here, 5, okay, we're rounding it to 3 decimal places. 5 is 5 and above. It's in this one here. So we round it up. Okay, so this 3 here becomes 4. Okay, the 3 becomes a 4 and it's been rounded up. Okay, here's some practice items for you to work with. This one here, we're rounding it to a whole number with no decimal places. This one here, we're rounding it to 2 decimal places. And here are your answers. Okay, looking at powers and roots then. When a number is expressed as a power or an exponent, do you remember in BEDMAS, the E of BEDMAS is exponent or power or root, it is multiplied by itself that many times. So when you see 2 to the power of 3, it means 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2. There are 3 2's multiplied together. So 2 multiplied by 2 gives me 4. 2 multiplied by 4 gives me 8. So 2 to the power of 3 and your answer is 8. Powers take precedence in BEDMAS. Okay, so after brackets you do your exponents. So in this case here, 2 plus, open your brackets, 6 multiplied by 3 to the power of 2, close your brackets, minus 4. Okay, you do this bit first, then you multiply it by 6. We have that sorted. Okay, so we started off here, 3 to the power of 2, that's 2 3's multiplied together, so 3 multiplied by 3 is 9. Okay, then we do the bit inside the brackets now. 6 multiplied by 9 gives me 54. Then you do your addition and then your subtraction and you end up with 54. Okay, the square root of a number is a number that when multiplied by itself gives the original answer. The square root of 4 is 2 because 2 multiplied by itself gives you 4. Okay, this can also be expressed as to the power of a half, okay, or 1 over whatever is in here. Okay, so for example, the cube root of 8 or the third root of 8, another way of writing that is 8 to the power of 1 over 3, and you'll notice I've put in brackets there, and that's useful on a calculator to put in those brackets, equals 2. Okay, because 2 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 2 will give me 8. Okay, so how do you do this on a calculator? Because these are usually calculated on a calculator. It depends on which calculator you're using. Sometimes it's a button like this, x to the power of y, or y to the power of x, or a button like this, or this little hat. It's usually up high on the button, or x to the power, and there's a little box up here. Okay, so to calculate using one of these buttons here, so 5 to the power of 3, you press the 5 on your calculator, then press one of these buttons, then you press 3, then you press equals, and out will pop your answer. Okay, so again, another example of this one here is 3 to the power of 2. We know that that's equal to 9. Make sure that you're getting the right answer. Press 3, press whichever button your calculator is, and then equals. Okay, 2 to the power of 7. Now make sure you're getting this one out right. Okay, so press 2, press the x to the y, or x hat y, or the hat, or the x to the square, then press 7. And don't forget to press the equals at the end, okay? And hopefully out will come 128 on your calculator. Okay, how do you do roots? Now, we've already mentioned, for example, that 128 to the power of 7, okay, another way to write that is 128 to the power of 1 over 7. On your calculator, you'll need to put in these brackets, okay? So, on a calculator, you're going to press 128. The same buttons we talked about on the last slide, so either x to the y, x to the hat y, or x to the hat, or x to the square. Open your brackets, press 1, divided by 7, close your brackets. Okay, equals, and hopefully out will pop 2. So again, make sure that this is working for you on your calculator. Here's some examples that you can work through, and just make sure you're getting the right answers for these. Okay, and here's a few more examples for you. And the answers. Okay, and at this stage we should be able to format fractions, percentages and decimal places, convert from one format to the other, understand the concept of the number of decimal places, round decimal places when appropriate only at the end, and understand powers and understand roots. Okay, this is the end of this video.